Hi, Charlie. Thank you for coming. I'm a part of the exec board for the Turning Point USA chapter at FSU, so
Awesome.
we really appreciate having you
Thank
here.
you for all your hard work. Great job.
Well, thank you for coming. I just have a quick question for you. What is your advice to young adults who are in relationships with a significant other who has opposing political views?
Yeah, great question. So obviously everyone is free to make their own choices. I think that is a recipe for disaster. I do. And I'm not saying break up with that person. I'm not saying you can't have a nice time. But here's a good question. Eventually, you might have children. Let's pretend you have children with that person, okay? Whose values are you going to teach the kid? Right? Who gets the, not you, I'm just saying, like, I'm just asking more hypothetically. What kind of school do you send the kid, right? Do you send it to a public school and government school or to a Christian school? And who decides then? And then over a period of time, you know, when you start living for a year or 2 or 3 years together, and all of a sudden the news comes on and tension's already high in the house, are you going to be able to discuss the nightly news politely and wonderful together? Are you going to see it all in the same way? What about charitable giving? Are you going to want to give to the same charities? I could go on and on and on and on. And I've seen it work every once in a while. I've seen people with opposing views build really beautiful lives and do great things. But I've seen it be a disaster more times than not. That doesn't mean, by the way, if you find someone that shares your views, that it's going to be the most wonderful thing ever. But if you want to have children, then I believe firmly you have to marry somebody or be with someone that sees the world the same way you do. Or else it's not fair to the child. Or else they're going to be having competing and confusing narratives and dialogues passed down to them at all times. And so do what you will with that, but I also have seen a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm going to change them." That's not a good idea. That usually doesn't work. And by the way, if you are in a relationship to change somebody, that's really not what a relationship is, right? Typically, people that go into a relationship with the intent of transforming the other, that ends like the Hindenburg. God bless you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh boy. Okay. I'm liberal, Mr. Kirk. I mean, okay, I voted Trump in the 2020 election, but...
Oh, good. You're not that liberal.
Okay, but things changed my mind. But anyways...
Okay.
I'm young, obviously, and I was wondering about trickle-down economics. I was wondering, when is it going to trickle down for me? Because historically, like, I've never personally seen it. Like, for example, Liz Truss she resigned over the dumb tax things. George Bush said it was voodoo economics. So my question to you is, would trickle down, or when is it going to trickle down?
Yeah, I'm not a defender necessarily
Really?
of trickle-down economics. I mean, I think in some ways, if you want to talk about supply side versus demand, here's the thing. I used to be a really, economic libertarian, and then I grew up, and you start to see that you actually need, some checks and balances on externalities of the market. I am a big defender of the market, though, generally. So how should we approach economics? I suppose that's a question, right? And so here's how I'll answer that, which is that an economy should serve people. People should not serve the economy. Okay, I think you and I could both agree with that. And so I will defend, though, the idea of giving tax cuts to businesses. That's a very good idea, because businesses are run by people, and businesses employ people. Now, should you only give them to big businesses? No, I think that's silly. But the vast majority of businesses in America are small businesses run by entrepreneurs. And so, for example, my entire economic viewpoint is to make you more empowered and easier for you to be able to start a business and grow a business from something to nothing. So you can call it whatever you want. You can call it free market economics, entrepreneurship-focused economics, whatever it is. But I think you and I could find some common ground on some things. For example, I think it's wrong and it's stupid and it's silly that the largest corporations in America don't pay anything in income tax, whether it be Amazon or ExxonMobil. It's not fair, it's not right, and I think a lot of these loopholes are designed to be able to favor the corporate lobbyists in Washington, D.C., while everyday people get completely and totally crushed. And I'm a conservative saying this. Do you want to chime in really quick?
Oh, yeah. I agree with you. I am not a big fan of bailouts. Like, during the COVID pandemic,
I was against it, yeah.
Yeah, the airline industry had to be bailed out by the American people, and I don't think that's right. If you have to shut down for a week and your whole business collapsed, like...
It's probably not a sustainable business.
Yeah, it's not a sustainable business. That's your fault. It's not for you to take the wealth of the American people and just put it back to your company.
So let me say one last thing I think that hopefully we can agree on. And this is where I'm probably in the most harmony with libertarians, okay? Which is what we are doing to our currency is immoral and wrong and has been warned for multiple decades and generations by people in the kind of libertarian community, and it makes every single person in this room poorer, and it makes the oligarchs, and it makes the people that run our society richer. A hyperinflated currency benefits people that already have hard assets that are able to move money quickly. Working people get crushed by inflation. And so let's put trickle-down economics aside. Let's say this. We need to have a monetary policy that does not destroy the value of the dollar 10% year over year so that everyday people can save and with expectations so that they all of a sudden don't have to say, well, I'm going to get 10% poorer this year. You know what ends up happening? People end up spending all their money on stupid stuff because you have just created mass economic cynicism. They say, what's the point in saving? What's the point in going into the market? It's just going to crash. And so I think you and I could both agree that from a monetary standpoint, we should encourage saving over spending and restore the purchasing power of the American muscular middle class.
I
God
agree.
bless you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, Charlie. So I used to be a conservative. I no longer am now. I'm actually a libertarian now. And a big reason for that is what I see as a contradiction within conservatism between supporting freedom, freedom of speech, to bear arms, and support for law enforcement. Because if the government were to infringe on our freedoms even more than it already has, such as banning assault rifles, for example, then the police would be the ones to enforce such tyrannical edicts, as the Canadian truckers discovered. So is there a contradiction here for conservatism? Why or why not?
Very smart question. I can see where you're coming from. So the way I would answer it is that we look at the FBI a lot differently than a local sheriff. So local sheriffs have been the ones defying all of these kind of gun-grabbing regulations and measures because the sheriff is probably someone in your local community you trust, probably someone that got elected publicly, probably someone whose kids goes to the local school, and almost always is a strong adherent to the Constitution. What I think you are yielding towards is something you and I could have a lot of agreement with, which is it's the FBI, the ones that take the knee for BLM, the ones that are calling for mass gun control. Do I trust them? Absolutely not. But do I think that local police is not just important but necessary for human flourishing? Absolutely. And so I'm a localist with this stuff. I think that the less federal control when it comes to a lot of these issues, the better. I question so much of the legitimacy of what the FBI is doing recently, and it pains me to say that as an American patriot, where I look at everything they do through a political lens now, from raiding Mar-a-Lago to spying on Donald Trump to the raiding of the homes of pro-life leaders. So your apprehension as a new libertarian is totally right. But I would just challenge you to be like, hey, that's a lot different than Sheriff Mark Lamb, for example, in Arizona, who is elected by the local people and doing everything he possibly can to go after smugglers and would never enforce a gun confiscation measure. And so we need to support our local police. Very, very important. They're in our community. They're one of us. Where the FBI is, though, I look at them as almost kind of infantry for the regime. Does that make sense?
Well, it's that, police, whether federal, state, or local, they're tasked with upholding, all the laws of the United States of America, federal, state, and local. So if the federal government were to, for example, pass a law that banned assault rifles, then wouldn't the local police then be compelled to enforce that law? Is that not something that
That's a
concerns
good
you?
question. We've already seen, though, a track record and a pattern of local police and sheriffs, hundreds, saying, I will not enforce any of these. Montana, for example, okay, came out through every one of their sheriffs and said, we're not going to enforce an assault rifle ban. We will ignore the federal government. So I would just challenge you to kind of look at some of that, at how some of these more local law enforcement agencies are already vocalizing that they are willing to say we are not going to enforce an unconstitutional measure from the federal government. But your apprehension is well-founded. I don't consider it a contradiction. I consider it a nuance and an important difference. But I think you would also agree you need some form of law enforcement, and I would much rather be policed by people that live in our communities, that are close to us and share our concerns, than somebody far off in a distant land. And I'll close with this. The left does not want to defund the police. They want to destroy local police and replace it with a national police force. And so you and I can definitely have agreement that a national police force is horrifying. It's something we do not support. I want thousands of local sheriffs that are accountable to the people and far less federal involvement kind of parachuting into our communities telling us what to do.
Thank you for your time.
God bless you, man. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Trevor Waller, and I just had a question. Why do you think that leftists and liberals and people on the left side, or why they push anti-science ideas in our school system? And then one last question. What do you think we should do with public school systems? Should we try to change them? Should we take kids out of the public school system, homeschooling? Because I'm a homeschooler. Just
Awesome.
wondering what you thought.
Yeah, great. So why do parents put up with it? That's a mystery to me. I think that's changing, though. I think parents are starting to push back. I think there is kind of a default setting of being polite in a lot of these communities, and parents don't want to come across as being impolite. So why do they teach things that are contrary to science? Yeah, that's a really important and good question. They would disagree with how you just categorized it, even though it is, science in and of itself. But they also have a different view of what science is. I gave a whole speech on this in Kansas City that I encourage you to check out, which is science properly understood should be about the preservation of human life and the advancement and the flourishing of human life. Science, like I would say, improperly applied is about exerting your own will and dominion over nature to show supremacy over the design, or let's just say the state of what nature is. I'll give you an example, right? So two forms of medical technology that could be used by the same person for two complete and total differences, okay? An abortion and a C-section. One gives life and protects life, and one destroys life. They're both instruments of science, because if you look at a test tube, you're not going to find morality in a test tube. So you have to bring some form of morality into science, right? This is one of the great lies, I think, of secularists. So they say, oh, you can find morality in science. No, at some point you have to have some sort of a construct and a framework, right? These are tools that you use, right? And so with that kind of advancement of technology, praise God, we have C-sections in America, right? It's the most commonly performed surgery in America that has saved millions of pregnancies and babies that otherwise we don't know would have happened. But then you have abortion, very similar procedure in the way a trained technician has to do that, but a completely different result. And so the question really needs to be, what is science? What is the point of science? I believe science should be first and foremost an inquiry into the natural world, understanding it. And if we have to intervene, if we have to create something new, it has to be under the moral framework of allowing human beings to flourish and to succeed. Your question about the public schools, look, I'm a local guy. If local areas want to have public government schools, so be it. But I think we have to abolish the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. I think we have to restore parents' rights to be able to have school choice and vouchers. And let me just say, you have a very, very good education program here in Florida. You're very lucky. Other states would give a lot to be able to have the type of educational mobility you have here in Florida. God bless you, man. I love homeschoolers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And if you guys disagree, you could come to the front. Just want to make that known. No pressure. So.
Hi, my name is Sarah. My parents got divorced when I was a toddler. I have no memory of them together. I'm 21 years old right now, and I got married this past April.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's phenomenal. That's thrilling.
So I've never had a good role model in terms of, marriage with my parents. So I was wondering, what would your best advice be for having a long, happy marriage?
So I've been married a year and a half, so I don't know about long or happy. Well, I know about happy, I don't know about long. So don't know about long. So, but we're working on the length. So look, I mean, it's not about you. That's the most important thing that you'll learn really quick. It's about service. It's about, commitment to the other. And this is the thing I always laugh about, when people say men and women are the same. When you're married for like an afternoon, you realize men and women are very much not the same. Right? And so, I mean, a great example is, when a man comes home from work, there could have been a nuclear explosion at work. How was work? It was fine. It was good. Where the wife just will talk about every single detail. It's just the nature, right? It's completely different. And then, Dennis Prager has a really great speech on this that drives the left crazy, which is that men's nature is towards variety, okay? And I think it's very important for wives to just say to their husbands, thank you for being loyal to me. It's a very important thing. A lot of men don't hear that enough, and it drives some women like, I don't want to have to say that. It's like, well, just study a little bit about men's nature and understand how men are kind of programmed towards variety. It's a very important thing. The final thing is just carve time for one another. And I mean, I'm a big believer in the 10 Commandments. I believe the Sabbath is one of the great gifts from God to be able to preserve the family. I think the Sabbath, properly understood, is the preservation of the family. And so I turn my phone off every Friday night, turn it back on Sunday morning. I'm unreachable by the world, and you just have to focus on another person. The last thing I'll say is this, is social media and phones will do everything it possibly can to get in the way of your marriage. So do what you can to put those aside, silence them, and I wish you a very, very long and happy marriage, and hopefully children sometime soon. And I fully support young people getting married early. I think that's a very important thing. Now, the reason, and people say, well, it's a risk. Why can't I wait till I'm 28 or 30? Because what if it's not the right? Everything in life is a risk. Okay, everything has a risk. But there's also another risk that you have to acknowledge, which is the risk of our thousands of listeners that email me and they say, I'm 35 and I haven't found anybody, and it's too late. That's a risk too. And I can tell you right now, the risk of having guilt or having despondency or having just kind of regret, that's the better word. That's a risk that some people need to know just as much as the risk of you might not be able to go to Paris every summer. And so I don't think we communicate that all the time to young people. So God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Hello, Charlie. Thank you for being here today. My name is Ari Daljan. I am a freshman political science major at Florida State. My question is going to be about two things you've said tonight. Our leaders stepping up for us and the freedom to make our own choices. But first of all, I want to ask why the orange branding? We're in Tallahassee, not Gainesville.
Oh, that's it. So in all fairness, it is the national branding. So every tour stop gets the orange shirts.
Okay.
That's a fair question, I have to say. It is.
Okay.
But for the record, I have spoke more at Florida State University than at the University of Florida. So let's just be clear. Okay?
So I think my question is going to be a lot different than other people, especially people who disagree with you. I am one of them. Okay. I'm going to throw you, Candace Owens, and Ben Shapiro into the same category. Three people who are mainstream to the modern conservative movement. All three of you, host podcasts. You go to colleges and host events like these. And I'm sure you know that there are a lot of moments where people come up, try to challenge you, and you end up, I guess I would say, winning an argument, and it ends up getting posted on social media, and people say, oh, Charlie Kirk owns the libs. But at the end of the day, I don't think that, trying to win an argument is a win for either of us, because even though we have these events, our politicians still continue to screw our lives over every day. And you were talking about our leaders stepping up for us. Mm-hmm. So my question to you, and let's say Candace Owens or Ben Shapiro were to also hear my question, is that why have neither of you or any of you considered running for political office? And I just want you to know that I wouldn't vote for you because I disagree with you guys on nearly everything, but I think you guys would win because obviously, because obviously, you guys are very good at marketing. You have huge platforms. Instead of, coming here debating against college students who all three of you have a clear advantage over because you have more life experience, why don't you debate the politicians who we are all critical of and actually make the laws in order to right their wrongs?
Well, two things. I'm happy to debate anybody. I debate college professors if they want to come on the show. I'll debate AOC. She's welcome anytime on my program. I'll have a long debate with Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar, Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. I think Candace Owens and Ben would also agree, or Matt Walsh or Michael Knowles, kind of all of us in the same sort of team, if you will. We'll have a conversation with anybody as long as it's in good faith. Now, the reason we're here on college campuses and we take open questions, and I don't think it's debating, I think it's like just respectful disagreeing, and if someone really gets heated, then yes, we are going to kind of ramp up the temperature and kind of just show the world kind of the proper way to have dialogue. But look around in the room, and I think that if by show of hands, do you think that most of the professors on campus are conservative or liberal? They'd probably say it's mostly liberal on campus, and they're hearing mostly liberal. So we're here to hopefully broaden the intellectual and ideological diversity on campus and to do something that's actually more important than running for office, which is to give so many young people here the confidence and the courage and the reminder that they're not alone and that there's other people that think the way they do on campus. and to be able to give them a community and network. And so I think your question's in good faith, right? I'm not here to, just obviously I've been doing this for 10 years, and so if someone has a disagreement, we'll have fun back and forth. At the same time, though, I think it's important that from some people who see our campus interactions, forget winning or losing the debate, I think it's really helpful for the hundreds of millions of people that have seen our videos or views over the last couple of years to kind of see what it's like to have two ideas collide in real time without scripting of cable TV. I think that's exciting and helpful for people, right? For example, if I asked you, do you think men can become pregnant?
I don't think you asked me that.
Well, I'm just asking you, do you think men can become pregnant?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. So we agree. So you're not a leftist, you're a liberal. And that's important for people to see. And I think there's value and merit in that. So thank you, men. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Good evening, Charlie. My name is Martin Walker. I'm the vice president of the chapter at TCC.
Awesome.
From my understanding, you wrote a book. You had mentioned that college was not for everyone.
Yes.
And getting a degree for me, it's not the end of the world. I just want to be successful. I just want to, me personally, I want to get more politically active or involved in politics. How would someone like myself go about doing that?
Great question. So degree in politics means next to nothing, right? If you want to get into politics, no one's going to care about where you went to school. Politics is the closest thing to a pure meritocracy of any industry you'll ever see. It's, are you going to show up early at precinct committee meetings? Are you going to make the phone calls? Are you going to drive halfway across the state for an event with 15 people? Are you going to be a body man to a state rep and, kind of help them out really when they need it? And so basically, if you want to make it in politics, you have to do the gritty hustle work for years, and eventually you'll get a shot to move up. And
yeah,
so,
absolutely. I can make the effort.
Then you're going to succeed in politics. I mean, so at Turning Point USA, we have an amazing staff, 250 people, and our Turning Point USA staff is a majority of them started as Turning Point USA chapter leaders doing the nitty-gritty work and then got internships and then started to work their way up through the ranks. And so we love people that dedicate themselves and work really hard, and kind of in the political space, it's a place where you could be really significantly rewarded by doing that. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
God bless you, man. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Given the concerns you've expressed about censorship and interference with free speech, I wonder how you view the laws in Florida and other states that restrict what professors can teach about racism in the classroom. I mean, obviously you disagree with the doctrines you teach, but why, would you extend to them the same right to free speech that you advocate for everybody else?
No, I mean, it's a matter of curriculum, right? So I would ask a question, should we teach the flat earth theory in physics, right? Should we teach bloodletting in biology? Should we teach lobotomies in medical school? Or should we teach eugenics in ethics? No, there's some ideas that are so reprehensible and provably wrong, they shouldn't be in anywhere close to an academic environment. Now, a professor obviously has the freedom of speech to say what he or she wants individually, but from a curriculum standpoint, from what you're able to measure or test, to say that all of a sudden we're going to teach that race matters, that somehow that people are suffering from a pandemic of whiteness, as Coca-Cola would say, or just critical theory or critical race theory, no, that has no place in an educational environment, because in an educational environment, it's less about really the opinion of the teacher or the opinion of the student. It's the pursuit of the soul and the entire being of the student towards truth, goodness, and beauty. And so you must have a teleological destination for that. Yes, a follow-up.
Just one follow-up, which is, so you would say that the idea that there's systemic racism in this country is as off base as the idea that the earth is flat, and as provably wrong as the idea that the earth is flat?
Yes, I mean, I would ask you, how are we systemically racist?
Well, I mean, we could have a long discussion about it, but I'm a journalist. I don't think it's a place for it, but possibly if you attended a class on it, you might get in a debate with the professor and see what their data shows and whether it's a matter of scholarly dispute. I mean, there's a lot of books on both sides, or whether it's as, I'm not aware of a lot of scholarly, well-accepted books that advocate that the earth is flat. So I would say this is a matter of scholarly debate.
There
These
was
others are
till
matter of
Galileo
debate.
came along.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. And yeah, just to close it, yes, I think advocating for black-only dormitories is a moral equivalent of bloodletting, lobotomies, and flat earth theory. I think it's evil, it's wrong, and has no place in American education.
Do I have permission to record your answer?
Yeah, when we're live streaming, so.
Okay, cool. I know that you and other conservative speakers have spoken at length about left-leaning universities and colleges, and I agree with you to that point about how toxic it can be. My question is there any blame to be placed on students who are coming into colleges without any moral ideals, without any political ideals? And if there is blame, whose fault is it? What's causing this, and what can we do about it?
There's a little blame on students, but you can't totally blame an 18-year-old for not having a certain grasp of a moral framework. I mean, I put the blame on the parents for not teaching morals or ethics or, proper civics or history. And also, it's not just colleges, it's high schools now, it's elementary schools, it's grade schools. And so I just say to parents all the time, you have to make it your full-time job to make sure your children shares some form of values of your own. And obviously, there might be some differences and nuances there. But I wouldn't put a lot of blame on the students. A lot of kids are 18, they do what they're told, they really haven't thought that deeply yet. That's not an accusation or criticism, it's just the way it is. I put it more on the educational system and parents not properly doing their job.
I agree with you on that.
God bless you, man. Thank you.
Good evening, Charlie. My name is Jonathan Ramirez. I happen to be a conservative. Despite me being a conservative, I do happen to be pro-choice. How do you feel on the matter, and where as a nation we can come together to agree on something sensible?
Sure. Well, I'll just ask you, when do you think human life begins?
Me personally, when I feel like it begins with the heartbeat, sir.
Okay, so you would a 6-week ban is okay then?
I'm pro-choice with exceptions. No woman, I don't feel like if a woman is due to have a child next week that she could choose to abort the child. That's not decency. That's not decent.
Okay, so but why a heartbeat? Like, what's the reason for that?
Why a heartbeat?
Yeah, like, so do you think we should not allow abortions right around 6 weeks? I'm just trying to
However,
understand.
I feel like 6 weeks is slightly too early, only because, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a gynecologist, but that means that week 6, that meant missed her period by 3 weeks, give or take, and that's already, then it's too late.
Potentially, right, but there's a heartbeat around 6 weeks. So,
Correct.
So just to play it out, that would be a termination of human life, right?
Correct.
Right, so why do we have murder laws then?
You ask, why do we have murder laws?
Yeah, because that'd be murdering a kid, right? If it's a human life, by your own estimation.
Correct.
So-
You stumped me there. I'm not gonna lie, you did stump me there. I contradict myself where I stand with the matter. That's why I'm asking more or less what's
That's okay.
your take on it.
Yeah, so my take is this: life begins at conception, and when life is formed in the womb, and deoxyribonucleic acid is created, a new being comes into formation, and that being is still growing, it's still on its process, but we as human beings tend to have size, level of development, environmental, and degree of dependency privilege. We think just because we're bigger and stronger and no longer in a womb, we have a moral right to do whatever we want to those that are still in the womb. And the toughest questions are the ones when we ask, what does it have to do with me, and is it worthy of protecting those that can't protect themselves? And so to be consistent, we say that's when human life begins. And just because the being is small, just because the being is in a womb, doesn't mean that we have a moral right to obliterate it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I think you're actually pro-life.
I am. I just think, of personal situations and,
That's understandable.
things of that matter.
But let's play that out just for a second. Situational ethics, for example, if a family is going bankrupt because the 4-year-old is eating too much food, you can't kill the 4-year-old to be able to reduce the family budget, right?
Correct. If I have the time, I will say for one reason that I do happen to be pro-choice. A lot of people that is pro-life feels like it is an extremity for women that is already on the system to continue to have more kids.
I hear you.
To be given more funds. So with the same notion, I feel like it's like having your cake and eating it too. If you don't want women to be able to have the option at all to get an abortion, but feels like they shouldn't continue to get more welfare, that means that child being born into the world is going to not be brought up
Sure.
to the same measures.
I think you're coming at it from a good perspective. That I reject kind of situational Malthusian ethics in that regard, in the sense that if it just makes your life easier, it doesn't mean you can commit an injustice against another human being. The same goes for arson or robbery or whatever it might be. But I will agree that we have to make it easier to adopt kids in America. There's 2 million families right now on the adoption waiting list, and there's a million abortions every single year. So the idea of an unwanted pregnancy is statistically untrue. And I believe that churches and communities, and yes, even at times city and state and local governments, need to step up and say, okay, we want Roe repealed, but we have to make sure that families and parents and moms have the support that they need. And I'll say one final thing, I think you agree. To the cowardly men that impregnate women and disappear, shame on you, and you're a big part of this problem.
100% correct.
God bless you.
Charlie.
Thank you.
Charlie, you spoke about the economic hardship that a lot of young Americans are facing.
Yeah.
What can conservatives do to make a difference on that? Like, how can we modify our national economy to relieve that suffering? I mean, that's very real.
Yeah, I mean, this is what's so frustrating, right, is that we're kind of under the tyranny of academics right now. So just a couple of very simple things. We got to get energy independent again. It's very simple. We got to drill, baby, drill far, drill wide, and tell Greta Thunberg to get the heck out of our national discourse and start actually understanding how energy policy impacts every single person in this room, okay? We got to bring down the price of oil. We got to tell OPEC to go shove it. We have to go exporting oil again. You got to get oil beneath $40 a barrel quickly. Now, that impacts everything. Let me just say, that lowers the cost of food because you got to transport it, the cost of transportation. The second thing, and these are very agreed upon things, second thing is we have to go after inflation with a sword, right? We have got to go through intentional monetary policies that cool the quantitative easing of the last 15 years. You got a follow-up?
No, I was just going to say, do you think that it's sort of the academic and media elite that put us in this situation to begin with? It was their policies and their philosophy, their propaganda that made it so that our national economy became over-financialized and it ate out the real economy.
Yeah, I mean, it also kind of, there's a couple things that happened in the 1990s. We allowed China into the World Trade Organization. We had NAFTA. We repealed Glass-Steagall, which never should have happened, amongst other things. And then 9/11 happened. We lowered interest rates. As soon as Greenspan did that, as soon as we set the precedent that there's any sort of economic misery, any sort of economic hardship, we could just kind of turn the lever on cheap money. It set this 20-year cycle that we're still living through right now with all that other nonsense of the deindustrialization of the American economy, of the hyper-financialization, as you say, led to 08. And then what was our immediate reaction to 08? It wasn't just financial and fiscal stimulus, it was then monetary stimulus, is that we're going to lower rates unrealistic. And so then what ends up happening? COVID happens, and our reaction to COVID, got to go down to record low rates. Well, there is a price of doing a 20-year sugar high. It's unsustainable. And so we've been on a 20-year monetary sugar high, not caring about the next generation, not caring about your purchasing power, couldn't care less about any of it. And so the result is what we're living through right now, which is you have hyperinflation and almost very dangerously low economic growth and a tumbling stock market. Yeah, you're living through crashflation, basically, even worse than stagflation. And so if I was head of the Federal Reserve, I mean, the only way to say is that we're going to have to go through an intentional 6-month recession to get this solved. There is no other way to do it because you've created this ridiculous, unrealistic circumstance. But Wall Street doesn't like that. Americans don't like that. So basically, here's what's going to happen. My prediction is that we are now going to be told by our elites we have to get used to 8 to 10% inflation for the next decade. It's the only way to do this. Unless you're willing to tighten the belt, the new normal will be 8 to 10% inflation, and you're just going to have to get used to it.
That's catastrophic.
Of course it is. That's the agenda, to reset the currency, allow the globalists into our system, to destroy the American dollar by other means. That's my prediction. You're going to see a labor market collapse in March. Mark my words. You're going to see unemployment go to 4 or 5%, and then you have a crash stock market, hyperinflation, just in time to try to blame the Republicans.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks.
While I agree with having a limited government and believe that we should have that in the long run, wouldn't a limited federal government allow for states to infringe on our constitutional rights, such as the right to life? Do we need to temporarily use big government to protect our God-given rights in godless states like California?
Good question. So thankfully, I don't live in California, but a lot of people do watching on the live stream. Hello, our California people. So I believe in a small but strong government. That's an important part, right? So if you go read the Federalist Papers, of which I encourage all of you to read if you ever want to get ready for bed and fall asleep, they're beautiful. They are. It's just they're written in a type of English that isn't really around, but you could learn so much. You read the Federalist Papers, there was this tension. And by the way, read the Anti-Federalist Papers too. They're just as interesting. That kind of gang of three, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison, who formed our structure and system of government, in a lot of different ways, they were debating in the open air against the Jeffersonians, and both won, right? And so what they wouldn't really admit is that they took a lot of things to heart from Jefferson's critique of too strong of a centralized government, but basically history vindicated Hamilton, okay? History showed you need some form of a federal government because the Articles of Confederation were a mess, okay?
Absolutely.
The Articles of Confederation, you had no centralized government, you had nothing. And so there was coups, there were rebellions, no one knew how to trade, there was not the strong system of government, all this sort of stuff. And so to answer your question, should we have a federal, is it time to use big government? No, it's not. What it is time, though, is to pass laws that do protect the most basic things. So for example, if I'm a big supporter of pro-life legislation in all 50 states, if you can't protect those people that can't protect themselves, you're not even doing the most basic thing that government should do, okay?
Absolutely.
And I mean, so you have this insanely sick and twisted thing of events. Let's take the state of Oregon, okay? So in the state of Oregon, you'll have it's an amazing cartoon, right, of a guy that is sniffing cocaine with a straw. Which one do you think is illegal? The straw.
I think the straw is because probably because of all those
That's
bogus,
the left, by the way.
bogus environmentalist
Yeah,
restrictions
it's
there.
environmentalism over human decency and flourishing. So that's big government gone awry and not even doing its basic things. All right, I got to get some more questions. Thank you, man.
I'm sorry about my misuse of words there.
No, you're great, man.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for being
much. I hope you
involved.
have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlie. Thank you so much for being here. I'm a student here at FSU, and I'm a member of Turning Point.
Awesome.
So it's awesome to see you here. I've been a fan for years. Love to talk to you today. So my question is more about the future. I know no one can tell the future, including me, but in the next 10 to 15 years, I want to be married, and I want to be starting a family. I'm one of 5 kids to 2 loving parents, and we've been married over 20 years, and I'm a strong believer in raising my own family. So, however, like you say, inflation, it's on the rise. It's becoming harder and harder to make and save money. You also talk about how depression is at a high for this generation. And I've noticed that people who are in jobs they don't tend to like or aren't in jobs that they love, they're more likely to have depression or some form of mental health issues. So for me, like some of the careers I'm interested in don't pay the kind of money that I think it would take to support the kind of family I want, especially because I want to have a lot of kids because I'm a family with a lot of kids. So how do you think that I should go about finding a career that I both enjoy and pays the bills so that I can be happy and raise my family because I think being happy is necessary to emotionally, physically, and mentally support my family.
Let me challenge one of your frameworks. I think it's going to be helpful for you. Don't go do what you're interested in. Do what you're good at. So what's your skill?
Talking, persuasion.
Well, you can make a lot of money talking because I'm not kidding. If you are good at communication, from a public speaker to a writer, you can make a ton of money. Now, what are you interested in?
Business is a huge interest. I also I like groups like Turning Point or groups where you advocate for something. I'm a huge mental health advocate. I'm huge on that. I'm huge.
You'll figure it out. The point is this: is that I hear kids all the time say that I'm following my heart and my passion. That's a really bad idea. And it's the worst advice. Follow your skill that you don't hate. No, serious. And then you'll, if you don't hate, I'll give you a great example. If I followed my passion, I'd be a college football coach. Seriously. And I love college football more than anything else. And I by the way, I'm not a fan of your coach. I'm just going to be very honest. So, he's not going to make it. He's not going to bring you to the promised land. I'm telling you right now. It's not going to happen. Mark my words. Just wait. Just wait. Okay. Well, when was the last time you guys went to a bowl game? Right? Not a while. What? 2 wins away? Wow. What is it? Week 7? Yeah. I'm saying Florida State is you compare that to Bowden. Okay. You guys deserve. You guys should be undefeated, is what you should be. But anyway, I don't know how I even got onto that. I don't mean to insult, but I love college football. A big fan. Now, if Florida beats you guys this year, I think he might be getting the axe, but we'll see. So, but that's not what I'm the best at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's about your following your skill, okay? And following your skill is very important because then other things start to fall into alignment, okay? And make sure you don't hate that skill. And then the final thing is this. You just have to dedicate, if you want to be successful in life, you have to dedicate yourself to hustle and grit. It's very rare to find. Show up the earliest, leave the latest, and complain the least. You do those 3 things, I don't care what you do, you're going to move up because that's very, very hard to find.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.
Hey, Charlie. My name is Sharon. I'm a mom of 4, and
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. My oldest is actually your age, and my youngest is a junior in high school. Who's right over there? Anyway, my question is, well, first of all 4 have gone through public school, which back in 1999, when we started that, it didn't seem like a bad idea. And actually, we've had many great teachers, and it worked well for us for a long time. But obviously, in recent years, our eyes have been opened, and there's been a lot of going on and agendas pushed within the school system. I'm also the local chapter chair for our Moms for Liberty, so
Awesome.
been on the
Love
forefront.
Moms for Liberty. Great job. Great.
Been on the forefront of trying to fight our district, who has been one of the ones, defying the governor and our state laws. So my question for you is around school choice. I see that Arizona just this year voted to have a statewide school choice system.
It's really good.
And actually, I've been feeling with the frustration locally that maybe it's a better idea to put energy and time into supporting, getting behind, advocating for a statewide school choice system in Florida.
Yes. So the issue with your Florida education is you guys have a very tricky funding model, right? So if I understand correctly, every school district gets appropriated the same amount of tax dollars. Am I understanding that correctly?
Per student is how I understand it.
Yes, that's right. So
Yeah,
that's
okay,
correct.
okay.
So it gets funded by student. That is very unusual, right? So Illinois, it's based all on school district, and it's all sort of messed up. But I'm still a huge school choice advocate. The only issue is that you're going to have trouble getting it through the legislature because there's a lot of these deals that have been made and relationships and infrastructure that's built there. And so I would start small. So Arizona just passed the best school choice legislation in the country. Took 20 years to get there of small incremental work. It's so good in Arizona. Any parent can send their tax dollars to any school of their choosing at any time, regardless of circumstance. I want that school, I want that private school, that charter school, that. It's full choice. It's awesome.
Yes.
And so if a Hispanic family in the west side of Phoenix who's just really struggling economically, doesn't like the local school, they could pull the trigger and get their kid to a successful school. If they don't like CRT, the wokeism, the pornography in their school, boom, they can move it right out, right?
Yeah.
And so I would encourage you guys to entertain that. I'm not a policy wonk on this thing, but you guys have a much better school choice system than most other states. And I hate to give credit to him for this, but Jeb Bush did a pretty good job actually on schools and for at least getting a charter model. And more broadly and nationally, the Florida charter system inspired so many other states to get involved in it. And Jeb was really kind of the pioneer of that, as much as it pains me to say.